If you are on a budget, if you're looking for something affordable, you need to consider the total cost of staying in that particular apartment unit. So is a $1,500 rent apartment cheaper than a $1,600 apartment? Perhaps, but not necessarily. How to find an affordable apartment in Toronto. Very recently, one of you guys asked me to make a video on how to find an affordable apartment in the very, very expensive city of Toronto. So here it is. Today, I'm going to share with you my 5-step guide for beginners for finding an affordable rental here in Toronto. So let's start. And the first step is to set your budget. First of all, you need to set your priority. When you're looking for an apartment, is your priority your budget, or do you have very specific criteria for your dream apartment that you have to stick to no matter what? And depending on what criteria you choose, you will end up on a very, very different kind of apartment hunt. But since you're looking for something that is affordable in Toronto, I would strongly advise you to set your budget, a fixed budget from the beginning. And this, of course, can be arranged starting from no lower than $1,500. That is if you're looking for your own unit, your own apartment with your own bathroom and kitchen and not something that is shared. If you want to go any lower than $1,500, then you might either get a basement apartment, which is below the ground floor. It might also be a room that you rent within a house where you share common spaces like the washroom and the kitchen, or it's a rental unit that's not really standard. And by not standard, for example, I mean that the size is super, super small. It has a very weird shape. It has no windows and so on. So if you want to look for something standard above the ground, one unit for yourself, your starting price would be $1,500. And even that is increasingly hard to find, almost impossible, but there are exceptions, so don't give up. So for example, set your budget at maximum $1,500 or $1,800 or $2,000. And that will depend on your overall budget, your income, and so on. And it really, really helps to have this price range, because by doing that from the start, you already narrow down your search and you can get very focused. What happens if you do not set a budget from the beginning is that in the end you will waste a lot of time going back and forth, because the thing is, here in Toronto there are apartments at any price point. You can find beautiful spacious apartments for as expensive as $3,000, even $5,000, and you can go as low as $1,400 or even $1,300. So number one, set your budget or a budget range and stick to that. Now let's go on to number two. And actually you can either do this step first or the one that comes after this, so they kind of run in parallel. So step number two in your renting an apartment process is to research locations. Guys, I must tell you that it is so important before you rent any apartment to get to know the neighborhood, especially if you're not living in Toronto yet. If you're already living in Toronto, then you kind of have an idea of which neighborhoods are nice, are fun, are safe, are clean, and so on. But if you're not living in Toronto yet, and especially if you're coming from overseas, then chances are that you have no idea at all what kind of neighborhoods there are here in Toronto, which neighborhood is good, which neighborhoods are popular, and which are less in demand. So before you go and decide on your apartment, I would strongly advise you to spend some time in the city of Toronto here. Just rent an Airbnb for a few weeks or stay at a friend's or family's place and explore the area, explore the different neighborhoods. And if for some reason you cannot do that because you're overseas and you just need an apartment before you arrive here, then at least do your research online. Browse the different neighborhoods within the city of Toronto and see which one may suit you. The danger is, if you do not do your research on the different neighborhoods first, is that you might end up with a beautiful unit, the perfect apartment in a less desirable area. And as all of you guys know, when you're looking for a house to buy or a place to rent, location is one of the most important, if not the most important thing. Location, location, location. So for most of you who are not living in Toronto yet, your first instinct might be to look for something in downtown Toronto. And I absolutely understand where you're coming from, especially if you're studying in downtown or you have a job in downtown Toronto. Your first instinct will be to just find something downtown. And that's okay if you can afford that, right? But most likely, if your budget is very limited, in downtown Toronto, you will only get something that is tiny and it might not necessarily meet your needs. Or even you might not get anything at all at your price point. For example, if your budget is only $1,300 or $1,400, then most likely you won't get anything in downtown Toronto, except, of course, like I said earlier, if you're willing to share an apartment with other people. And that's why, guys, I would highly recommend to you to stay open to other areas. The apartment does not have to be in downtown Toronto. There are many other areas, neighborhoods outside the downtown area that are also nice, clean, convenient, safe, and so on. Just to mention a few, for example, the Junction area or Scarborough or Davisville, for example. There you can still find rentals that are relatively more affordable than in downtown, that are pretty decent, about half an hour away from downtown. And in case you're worried about transportation, rest assured the public transportation system in Toronto is relatively good. Everything is relatively well connected. So stay open to the possibility of renting something outside of the downtown area, but do your research and get to know the different neighborhoods, and you might just find something that you even like better than downtown. By the way, guys, if you found this video useful so far, then please do me a favor and hit the like button. I would really appreciate that. That would enormously help my channel because it would signal to YouTube that this video is useful and that it should get out to more people. Thank you. And also, guys, if you've been following my channel for a while and you feel that you've been getting a lot of value from this, if you want to support my channel and what I'm doing, you can also leave me a super thanks down below. Step number 3 is to start searching for rental units for considerations, your rental unit candidates, if you will. So many of you have asked me where to find an apartment. Where can I find affordable apartments? And I must tell you, there are so many platforms that you can use for your apartment hunt. For example, PadMapper, Zolo, Zillow, Kijiji, even Facebook. And the old traditional Google search can oftentimes also be very useful. For example, if you use Google search, what's important is the search criteria that you enter. And if you're on a budget, if you're looking for something affordable, then simply type in 1-bedroom apartment under $2,000 or bachelor unit under $1,500 and so on. What you can also do is to find a real estate agency such as Remax or Sutton Realty that can help you in your search. And if you're really clueless here in Toronto, sometimes that can be a pretty good idea. At least you have a partner that you can talk to who can give you advice and give you information on the different rental units, the pricing, and the neighborhoods, and so on. And if you're worried about having to pay any commissions, fortunately, here in Canada, in general, tenants are not required to pay any commission to the real estate agent. Usually that cost is borne by the landlord. Or you can also do both. So you run your own search online and enlist the help of a real estate agent in parallel, because you never know where you will find that rental unit. And now when you start your search, and for example, your maximum budget is $1,500, most likely the rental units that will appear are not rental units in downtown Toronto, but outside of the downtown area. And that is why previously I told you in step 2 that it's very important for you to research the different neighborhoods, because then when you do your search online, you will be able to gauge whether or not this or this rental unit might be a possibility for you or not. If it's, for example, in this one neighborhood that you absolutely do not want to live in, then you can just eliminate that option. So guys, very important, as I told you before, do not immediately get turned off if a rental unit is far away from the downtown area. If you happen to work in downtown or you need to go to downtown Toronto on a daily basis, what actually matters is not the absolute distance, but the time that it gets you from that apartment unit to downtown. And to figure that out, you can simply use Google Maps. So you can find out on Google Maps how long it would take you to drive from point A to point B in downtown. Or if you're using public transportation, you can simply look at the connection. So input the address of the rental unit and input your destination in downtown, and see how well connected it is, how many options you have for transportation, whether you need to take the subway, the bus, the streetcar, etc., how many times you need to transit, how many minutes it takes you in total, how much it costs, etc. And sometimes, surprisingly, even though the rental unit seems as though it's very far away, if you look at the public transportation connections, you might find out that actually it only takes you 25 minutes to get to downtown. And when you do your search, guys, always be on guard. This is something very important that I need to emphasize here. Be aware of scammers, especially if you try and find a rental unit on Facebook, on Kijiji, and so on. Nowadays, there are so many scammers. And in fact, I made a video about this, about how you can protect yourself against scammers, how you can identify red flags when you're in the process of looking for an apartment. And if you want to know more about that, and if you want to make sure that you don't fall prey to these scammers, then make sure that you check out this video here after you're done watching this one. So now in step number 3, you've already searched your candidates, you have a few possibilities, and now let's go on to number 4. And this is where you need to figure out the real price or the real cost of renting that apartment unit. At first, you might think that it's as simple as just looking at the monthly rent, for example, $1,400 or $1,500, but unfortunately, it's not that simple. The thing is that when you rent an apartment, the rent is not your only cost. So is a $1,500 rent apartment cheaper than a $1,600 apartment? Perhaps, but not necessarily. And this is why, if you are on a budget, if you're looking for something affordable, you need to consider the total cost of staying in that particular apartment unit. So don't just consider the rent, but also consider what is included in the rent. For example, are utilities included? And if so, which utilities are included? Is hydro or electricity already included in the monthly rent? Is water included? Is heating included? Because keep in mind that here in Toronto, where the winters can be so freezing cold, heating costs can rack up pretty fast. Also, is parking included in case you have a car? Is internet included? Sometimes that is the case, but in most cases it's not. And also, does the unit already come with furniture, appliances, or do you need to make a lot of investments in that unit? So if that $1,500 apartment does not include any utilities yet and it's empty, it doesn't have any appliances, it doesn't have any furniture, no parking, if you need that, and on the other hand, you have a $1,600 unit, but that already includes all utilities except internet, for example, and also parking, and that has a value of, let's say, $120, then the $1,500 rent apartment is not necessarily cheaper than the $1,600 apartment. Another cost factor to consider, this seems negligible, but it's really not, is the cost of transportation. So let's say that you work in downtown Toronto and you found a small apartment there, a bachelor unit for $1,700, including almost all utilities. On the other hand, you found a $1,550 apartment outside of downtown Toronto that's about 20 minutes away. And let's say that every day you plan to take public transportation. So back and forth using the TTC, the public transportation system here in Toronto, that would cost you around $6.50. Let's just say $7. So if every month you need to go to downtown 22 times excluding weekends, then that's 22 times $7, approximately $144, $150. So that is something that you also need to consider. The downtown unit of $1,700 per month might be $150 more expensive, but if you take into consideration what you save on transportation costs, actually that ends up to be the cheaper option. So guys, I know that there are a lot of factors to consider, and if you really want to find the best apartment unit for yourself, what I would recommend to you is just to make a simple Excel table to compare the different options, including the cost, the utilities, transportation costs, and so on. And now let's continue to number 5. Number 5 is actually to view the apartments, make your choice, and close the deal. This is something that surprised me when I arrived here in Toronto. I didn't expect that rental units would go off the market that fast. I was looking for apartments and I found several that I was interested in, but I was still considering. I didn't make up my mind. And then I checked again after 3 days and it was already gone. That was something that surprised me because I wouldn't have thought that rental units would go off the market as fast as that. But yes, here in Toronto, that does happen. Rental units disappear pretty quickly. So this is what I would recommend. When you have done a rough research of the different neighborhoods and search your candidates, then concentrate your apartment search ideally within a week. Make it very tight. Prepare enough time during that week so you have the leisure and the time to go around and look at different apartments. And as soon as you find a couple of candidates, make your decision quickly. If you still need more tips to find your ideal apartment here, then make sure that you also check out this video here. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.